What's up YouTube? KidMoto22 here today, and I have Mrs. KidMoto with me again. Maybe we can see her in the mirror. And we want to give you guys a wrap up of our trip to Duluth. So I've posted our first day and our second day, and then we had some technical difficulties, which I understand does happen from time to time when you're recording. And so we're just going to give you a wrap up, and then I'm going to throw some footage that we got from Mrs. KidMoto when she was recording with a GoPro from the back. So we'll kind of talk about our day 3 and day 4 and just throw some footage on there. I'm going to preface all of this with saying we did not get day 4 footage, and I will explain to you all of that as we go. Welcome back YouTube. KidMoto and Mrs. KidMoto talking to you guys today about our day 3 and day 4 wrap up of our trip to Duluth. So it's been a little while since I've posted anything on that trip, and really part of the reason why is that I wanted to have an opportunity to get Mrs. KidMoto on the bike with me, and so we could talk about it together since we did the trip together. And the first 2 days of footage did include Mrs. KidMoto on there, and so I wanted to make sure she had an opportunity to wrap up along with me for our last 2 days of our trip. So welcome back to the channel, dear.
Thank you so much.
So one of the things that that we learned on a trip is that motovlogging and being on a trip and going on vacation and a motorcycle trip in general, everything takes a lot of time.
So true.
And that was one thing that Mrs. KidMoto said to me when we were riding, is she said that was one thing by day 2 that you learned, that you can't do anything in a hurry, right? So you get off the bike to go into some place, and we have to take everything off and lock everything up and lock up our helmets and all of that kind of stuff, and everything took a long time. Was that kind of a bummer for you, or just something you had to get used to?
Just something I had to get used to. Right, yeah, don't think about how easy it is when you're in a car to just like hop out and lock the door and you're good to go.
Yeah, for sure. That was one thing, and I had taken other trips obviously, so I had a pretty good idea, but one thing I hadn't considered is that 2 people, I mean, it really does take twice as long, sometimes even longer, because when it's just you have your own mental checklist of the things that you want to make sure that you do. And when you're riding with somebody else, you just don't want to make any assumptions. So we didn't want to leave anything unlocked, or leave something somewhere, or forget gloves, or whatever it might be. And then packing and unpacking, you have twice as much stuff. So
sometimes finding the keys, remembering which pocket the keys were in, took a while.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, just all kinds of things like that. So you guys saw our day 1 trip, which was our trip to Duluth, and then our day 2 trip, which was up the North Shore to Grand Marais, right? That's where we stayed?
Yes.
Yeah, Grand Marais. So that was our day 2 part of our trip, going up to Grand Marais. And so day 3 was coming back down the North Shore, back to Duluth, and just kind of some of our adventures for that day. And I think day 3 was the most fun I had on the trip. What are your thoughts on that?
was the best. Comfortable riding, not too windy. We got to see some really cool scenery. When we went to the lighthouse.
Yeah, that was in the Two Harbors Lighthouse. Was that was what that was, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so
And
the
then
regular...
walk down on the rocks. Sorry, walk down on the rocks and get close to the water, and that was really cool.
Yeah, the regular lighthouse at, is it Silver Bay? I'm not sure. There's another, like, lighthouse museum that you can actually go out to, one of the only active lighthouses on Lake Superior on the North Shore, and that was actually closed. So we were not able to go to that specific lighthouse because obviously because of COVID restrictions, it was closed. So we opted, and that was actually on day 2 when we noticed it was closed, so we opted to go to a smaller lighthouse museum in Two Harbors, and we did that day 3. So we got up on day 3, we packed up the bike and headed back down the North Shore that morning. We had a little bit of a wind that day, but the wind was to our back, which was really nice. And we went to the museum at Two Harbors,
Which was super tiny and took about 3 minutes, but...
Right, so if I were to give anybody advice, I would say don't pay for the actual lighthouse museum tour because you can walk all over the grounds for free. And the grounds were really nice. There was a couple of hiking trails. We didn't actually go on any hiking trails, but we walked on the rocks right down to the water, and then you can walk on kind of a water break, a cement water break that goes way out, that does have a light at the end of it, and that water break was where the ingot ships, so the big ships that they have that take the iron ore ingots, and we were able to watch one of those ships come out, and from that particular kind of cement water break, and so that was really cool. We got an opportunity to see a ship kind of leave that area, and that was in the morning of day 3. So we headed out from Two Harbors because we had a date in Duluth for a boat tour. and we were going to back to Duluth and go on a tour of Lake Superior. And unbeknownst to us, as we were heading down to Duluth, it was actually getting windier from our perspective, but we didn't really notice it as much because we had a tailwind. But by the time we got to Duluth, it was actually quite windy. And we were able to go on our boat tour, but we were not really able to leave the harbor and go out onto Lake Superior. So our boat tour ended up being just a harbor tour. So we essentially got a tour of a lot of the industry that is in the Duluth area, which was really cool. I thought that was kind of a neat thing.
Super interesting.
Yeah, just to see, all of the different industry and different things that get loaded and unloaded off of the ships, and lots of iron ore and
how old some of those ships are.
Yeah. There was one of the ships in the harbor that had just been decommissioned about 15 years ago, and that ship was running until 15 years ago. When it was decommissioned, it was built in 1905, and so that was incredible. It was a ship that hauled goods, and yeah, I mean, it was amazing, and still floating in the harbor. I mean, there was a company that bought it and intended on decommissioning it for scrap, and they hadn't done it, so it just sits there. So it's kind of a cool thing for them to see as they're driving in and out of, as the tours are driving in and out of the harbor. So really, really cool. And the ships are amazingly huge. And we got to see some of the tugboats moving some of those big ships around, which was really cool. I've never seen anything like that before. So yeah, that was our day 3. Our day 3 was coming down the North Shore, stopping at 2 harbors and seeing that museum. And then yeah, there was a lot of just cool scenery on the North Shore that we got to see. There's a couple tunnels you get to drive through. Stopped at a place and had some really good pie and some lunch. I think it was at Betty's Pies.
Yes, on the way back. Yes.
Yep, on Betty's Pies on the way back. Yeah, that was really good. Good pie there. If you go on the North Shore and you've heard of Betty's Pies and you want to eat there, be sure that if you go there around a mealtime, you are going to have to wait, because it's a very popular, I think probably a pretty popular kind of tourist spot, and so there was quite a few people that were kind of stopped there for pies and that kind of stuff. So
right.
And it was a warm day that day. I remember getting into Duluth and coming in from where we were at, the traffic was kind of heavy, and we got into town, we were in dead stop traffic, and since we had been driving all day long, the bike was hot, it was hot. That was a pretty warm time. We stayed in a hotel in downtown Duluth, and that's when we went on the boat tour that evening. And after the boat tour, we went and had some good Mexican food in downtown Duluth, and back to our hotel room, and that kind of wrapped up our day 3. Is there anything that you remember that I forgot about day 3?
No. but which it did. But
it did, yeah. We actually did plan that for what we thought would be the kind of the 2 in-between days of the trip. Got a hot tub. Got a hot tub on 2 of the days, which was actually really nice because it was really relaxing after riding a bike for a full day and having an opportunity just to hang out in a hot tub in the evening that night. That was really nice.
True.
I would highly suggest that to anybody going on a bike trip, on a bike vacation, is plan a night with a hot tub in your room. That is well worth it.
That was definitely a nice part of the day.
Yep. So day 4, and we had come back to our hotel room after eating dinner and spending some time in the hot tub and then just relaxing before going to bed that night, and the weather alerts started to pop up. And we were getting a lot of weather alerts for impending storms coming through our area.
Right where we needed to drive home.
Yeah, so they were going to be going through our area and being right in the area where we needed to drive home. It was not looking good for day 4 for our drive home. It was actually looking to be pretty terrible, to be honest. And so we got up in the morning and we were getting ready to go, and I was taking a shower and we were getting everything packed, and we looked outside, and at that very moment it was not raining, or it had rained, everything was wet, and it was not raining at that moment. And Tiffany said, we should go right now, didn't you?
I did. I looked at the radar and I'm like, we need to go now. Right now.
And I was dinging around, and I was not ready to go, and I knew we needed to get our rain gear on, and so we got packed up, got down there, and by the time we got down to the bike, it was absolutely positively pouring. Raining so hard.
Torrential downpour.
Yeah. Raining so hard that we couldn't even we couldn't have walked out to the bike without being totally soaked. We did have all of our rain gear on, and at this point Tiffany was like, what are we doing? Why are we going home right now in the middle of a rainstorm when it's like this? And I keep reassuring her, you know, we're gonna be fine, we're gonna be fine, we're gonna be fine. And I'm getting ready to go, and it's raining harder and harder and harder, and I'm like, yeah, this is a bad decision. We can't leave right now. So it's about 9 o'clock at this point, and we had to check out at 11. So we figured we would just sit in the hotel room and wait it out, and see if we had to wait for 2 hours, we were going to wait it out. We went back in, we got a key to our room again, and went back upstairs. And so
took off all the rain gear.
Yeah, took off all the rain gear after we'd put it all back on, you know, so now you're hot and sweaty and uncomfortable and everything. And
it was great rain gear, but I'm like 5'1" and I was swimming in it. Kind of looked like an Oompa Loompa walking through the hotel.
Yeah, so it's I'll do a review on the rain gear probably this winter when I can't ride. And we'll kind of give you the lowdown on all the rain gear, but good rain gear besides that, besides the size situation, which we knew we would run into with Mrs. Kidmoto being, you know, being
vertically challenged.
Yes. So, yeah, so we were keeping an eye on the radar, kind of looking out for what we were going to do, and we quickly realized that we saw like this window of opportunity where the weather was breaking in Duluth, the weather was breaking in the path that we needed to drive in, but we basically had a window like, we got to go now. And so we checked out again, we booked it down to the bike, we got everything packed up, loaded up, got all of our gear on, you know, got the bike fully loaded up, dried off as much of it as we could, and jumped on and headed down. We were going to be riding on the interstate for a while in Duluth before we were going to get to where we were going. And what were you feeling at this point?
I was nervous for sure. I was just having like visions of us hydroplaning and like spinning out and dumping the bike, and just because I've never ridden in anything like that before, and so I was scared for sure. Not gonna lie, I was scared.
Yeah.
But
so and honestly, I mean, when we were gonna leave the first time at 9 o'clock, it wasn't, you know, that was the time to get off the road, not to get on it. So it was really good that we made the decision to wait it out for a little bit. So when we got back on the road, it was raining a little bit, not enough, honestly, to get us even wet at all. Our rain gear did exactly what it was supposed to do. We got on the interstate, and without the rain gear, obviously, we would have been soaked because the road was wet and everything else. But with the rain gear, we were perfectly good. Everything, all of our gear stayed dry. Everything that we had packed and brought with us stayed dry. We had a dry bag for a bunch of our things, and covering for the rickrack bag I use on the back of my bike. So everything that we had stayed dry. We had our rain gear on, we stayed dry, and we headed home. And for the first, I think, probably 3 hours of our ride, the roads were wet. It was cool, the roads were wet. We were riding in, you know, we were riding in pretty cool temperatures and wet roads, and kind of
super foggy
off and on rain. Oh yeah,
a little bit.
Yep, that's right. And for part of it, it was super foggy. So yeah, we hit some fog. So that, you know, so that's the biggest reason why we did not get any footage on day 4, was that I wasn't about to try to film and motovlog when I really needed to be. I needed to be as vigilant as I possibly could, and really paying attention to the road and all of the hazards and everything that we had going on with it raining and wet conditions and that kind of stuff coming home. So we did 0 motovlogging day 4 on our way home, and then we had all of the weather pretty much you can experience in one day. We experienced that particular day coming home. So it was raining when we started out. The roads were really wet. It was cool. We were riding through some pretty cool temperatures after the rain. We hit quite a bit of fog at a certain point, and that was still cool temperatures there. And then as we got closer to home, we of course stripped off our rain gear and just had our regular gear on. And then we continued to strip off our regular gear until we were just wearing jeans and t-shirts again, because by the time we were 30 miles from home, it was 90 degrees and about 85% humidity. So it was blazing hot by the time we got close to home. So yeah, that was our day 4. So hence the 0 motovlogging. But really, after it was all said and done, and we've now had basically about a month and a half almost to kind of reflect on the trip, Mrs. Kid Moto did her first motorcycle trip, her first time riding in the rain, first time tipping over on a bike, let me see, first time picking up a bike that tipped over.
Right.
She had her first time on the North Shore, and first time riding over 800 miles in one trip. So tell me, you had all of these firsts. What did you think? Would you do it again?
I would do it again for sure. It was nice. It was really nice to get away and do something different. You know, there's not a lot of options right now for any type of vacations, and if you're wanting to social distance is recommended. It's riding a motorcycle is an easy way to do that.
Yeah, for sure. So a motorcycle trip for sure is an easy way to practice social distancing. So if you have somebody you can ride with, that was that was definitely a plus, I think, from our perspective, is that we kind of had this built-in platform for social distancing going on a motorcycle trip.
We tried to eat at restaurants. I think we said this in a former video, but tried to choose restaurants that had outdoor seating so that we could be out in the fresh air. And I think we talked about also that when we go on trips, we always try to eat at restaurants that we don't have in our hometown, so that we have something, a new experience, since we were able to do that.
Yeah, so yeah, very true. We ate at all restaurants that we don't have at home. We didn't eat in one place that we had at home. We tried new food. I tried a couple things that I'd never had before, and I think you're right. I think we might have mentioned that in another video, but yeah, so it was good, and it was funny because we were on our way home and we weren't motovlogging, and I asked Mrs. Kid Moto if she would do this again, if she would go on a trip with me again, and specifically if she would go on a motorcycle trip with me again, and her answer was, I believe your answer was, not tomorrow, but if you wanted to go next weekend, I'd certainly consider it, and if you wanted to go later than that, the answer is yes. I'm pretty sure that's what you said, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready to get back on the bike again the next day. I needed a little break, but yes, for sure.
Yeah, so that was, so for me, you know, being as how this is, you know, really one of the things that I love the most in life is riding my motorcycle, and having an opportunity to experience that with Mrs. Kid Moto, and experience it in a way that we hadn't. So we weren't riding around town, we weren't going on a 10 or 15 minute ride, that we were going to be on the bike with no car, just her and I, for 4 straight days. It was our only means of transportation. It was going to be how we were going to be going to restaurants. Everything that we were going to be doing was going to be revolving around the motorcycle and experiencing a vacation from a motorcycle. And the fact that she said she would do it again, and that she would do it again soon, was great. Now, we haven't had an opportunity to go on any trips again and on the bike, and I don't know if we will be able to again this season. We did actually just do a day trip and went to Fargo, which is was about a 150-mile trip for us, and so we did a trip like that just to get out of town, and went to the Harley dealership in Fargo, and then we ate outdoors at a restaurant that we don't have in town, since that's typically our rule for traveling, is we eat somewhere we don't have. And so we did that, and so yeah, it's been good. I can say that riding this season, from my perspective, Mrs. Kid Moto is getting to be a very good 2-up rider. I can feel her being much more relaxed behind me as a passenger. Anticipates things. If I tell her there's a bump, railroad tracks, whatever, I can feel her shifting and changing. You know, she's sure not to change positions a ton without letting me know she's moving around, because those of you that have ridden 2-up before know that the passenger can move the bike around significantly, and can specifically move the bike around a lot if they don't tell you that they're moving. So
that was one thing that was a challenge on our Duluth trip. I think was new for you, was having a passenger plus all of the stuff we had packed. That made the bike significantly heavier, and just the way it handles was different.
Yep, that was definitely a challenge that I had to get used to, was a passenger plus all the gear, and I will be fully transparent in saying that was completely where my mistake came from in parking that parking lot, was having the bike completely filled with gear, a passenger on, and being too heavy on the front brake and not using my back brake appropriately. And so that's exactly why we tipped, and it was 100% my fault, and all user error. And we actually talk about that in our last podcast, as why people don't ride, and when things go bad on your motorcycle. On the 5 Dirty Bikers podcast, we talked about that, where many times bad things that happen on motorcycles are user error. And I was a perfect example that tipping over on that trip was completely user error. That was my fault and something that I did incorrectly while we were riding. And you know, I certainly had to learn from that, and it's been something that has been something I've been thinking about more and more. And especially when we got to Duluth, I was thinking about it because Duluth is an area that has much lower or much more elevation than we have here.
Yes, very hilly.
Right, and so because of the increase in elevation, we had to I had to compensate for front brake, back brake for going up and down hills when you're in traffic and that kind of stuff, which was again something I was not used to. So, you know, that was all things. So, you know, obviously I learned from that, and it will definitely be one of the things that we will be able to consider in the future. And we were able to test our limits for how long of a day we can ride for. I certainly think that Mrs. Kid Moto is capable of a longer day than we did our first day. I'm fully convinced that she could ride longer than what we rode that day. We just would have to stop more and just take breaks, which is not necessarily a bad thing. That is definitely a way to combat fatigue. So, but yeah, thanks you guys for joining us today. Thank you for tuning in and watching what we're doing. And please let me know if you've got any experience 2-up riding and long trip 2-up riding, and what your thoughts are. Yeah, so we will certainly be documenting more of our adventures, and I will be documenting my trip coming up to South Dakota. And if you like what I'm doing, you can give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button. I think I've got it straight now. It's going to be up here. And if you want to see more of my content, hit the bell icon, and that will give you the reminder when I upload new content. So this is Kid Moto. I'm out.